for sure. All right, if you missed it, Jon Stewart did a segment on AI on The Daily Show. He came back. He's doing, I think, Mondays every week. And it went viral. And it was about how AI is going to change our jobs faster than any previous labor revolution. So it seems like the public is starting to get an idea about AI wiping out large swaths of jobs, and it's starting to hit the mainstream. CEOs like Brian Chesky from Airbnb and Aaron Levy from Box, I had them on This Week in Startups in the last year. They said they anticipate 30 to 50% productivity gains for a lot of the jobs in their companies, developers, customer support, all that stuff. And we covered Klarna's AI customer support agent doing the job of 700 full-time employees and driving a $40 million increase in profits this year, yada, yada, yada. We've talked about this over and over again, but it seems to be tipping over into public consciousness. We, Chamath, have talked about whether humans will find more work to do or if this is going to truly displace people. I think we all kind of feel like, at least to the best of my memory, we all feel like new jobs will be created, but it is entering the public's consciousness. What impact is that going to have if the public starts thinking AI is going to take their job, Chamath?
I mean, I think that social media will make this perception more widespread than it's been at other moments of revolution and innovation. But we've gone through this before. I'd like to summarize my thoughts in 3 charts.
Okay.
And I call this time it's not different. So chart number 1 for those watching on YouTube is a look at the components of US GDP. This is from the Bureau of Economic Analysis. Now, this goes from 1929 up to 2011. So it doesn't go all the way back to the 1800s, and we're missing the last decade. But the point is the following. If you can see the chart, if you can't see it, I'll describe it to you, which is that GDP, the components of GDP are surprisingly resilient and roughly the same over long stretches of time, which is that even though GDP goes up, consumer consumption is always around 70%. Net exports are a few percent plus or minus. Gross domestic investment is around the 20% level. And then government consumption is around the 20% level. And that's what adds up to GDP. So that's an important thing to note. Why? Because in the absence of something very acute like World War II, these things don't change over long periods of time. Okay, so if that is true, what happens when you have any kind of a revolution? So let's look at the Industrial Revolution. So the shift from farms to factories. And what you saw was exactly what people should be worried about with respect to AI, which is in specific job classes, things just fall to zero. So unemployment basically went to zero. And the income associated with those jobs also went to zero. So this is what people are worried about. But if you remember the last chart, the point is somehow we found a way to find growth. And this is what's demonstrated on this final chart, which is when you look at US productivity and worker compensation, this is going from World War II to today, you find that every time we find a new way of innovating, compensation tends to track it. So if you take these 3 things together, number 1, which is the components of GDP rarely change. Number 2 is that, yes, there are certain categories of jobs that always get disrupted away. But the third is the most important, which is that as productivity goes up, which is what AI should give us, just as we've seen in the past, compensation also goes up, which means new job classes will be created. So I think the macro picture, if you look back hundreds of years, is that this is like many other moments in time. It feels more personal right now because we're all living it, right? Few of us lived the agrarian to industrial revolution.
Yeah, no, we missed it.
And few of us lived the technological revolution, right? We kind of came in at the heels of it. But I suspect that this time is not different.
Freeberg, your thoughts on this? I think you've said something similar on past episodes. But it is kind of tipping into public consciousness, and it's also affecting white-collar jobs this time, not just people in fields picking berries. And so those people may be a little more vocal, and we've seen massive layoffs in tech, massive layoffs in media, and those jobs don't seem to be coming back. People seem to be taking the gains and just having people on the team be 30% more efficient, as Brian told me on my other pod. So what do you think, Freeberg? Is this time different, or is it the same?
So here's this article from June 2nd, 1983 in the New York Times, all about how computers are eliminating jobs. in industries that were effectively offline knowledge work industries at the time, creating engineering designs, creating architectural drawings. I think this article spoke to the fact that these jobs were going to be eliminated. And as we all know, those jobs actually got enhanced by computers, productivity went up, and new sub-industries emerged. And in fact, the overall industries actually grew in some cases when we were fearful of them being replaced due to the automation enabled by software. So I think that in this particular sense, we can talk about the Industrial Revolution enabling through manufacturing systems and centralized production a replacement of manual labor with machines. What we're talking about now is a replacement of knowledge work that has been aided by computers with machines. So the machines no longer even need the human. But the reality is that these systems are actually going to give humans 10 to 100x leverage. So when you think about that, one person could spend 3 weeks making an architectural drawing today. What if that one person could make an architectural drawing every 6 hours? So the question then is, do we stop making architectural drawings and we fire a bunch of architects? Or does the cost of making an architectural drawing drop by 90%? And it enables us to do more detailed, higher resolution architectural drawings across more places more frequently. And the industry actually booms. And what we've seen historically is that when productivity goes up, costs go down, the actual volume balloons and the economy grows. So it's an example where I think in this particular case, we will see these tools creating more leverage for knowledge work instead of just simply replacing knowledge work, and that humans will start to shift to a higher order of work, and we'll see the economy grow and productivity go up as a result. So I think that's my kind of key read on the story, but it's very hard to connect the dots for people without having all of these historical cases. And I think one of the ways to think about doing this usefully is you go back to the software revolution and all the stuff that we were doing with pencils and papers before computers. We actually didn't lose all those jobs. The people could now do 100 times or 1,000 or a million times as much work, and new industries emerged and productivity went up and the economy grew. And so we just have to have this realization as this starts to take hold that the industries will change and that the systems will actually provide leverage, not replacement.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And I think what you teach your kids is like really important at this moment in time. Like having a job that is replaced by AI or that could be greatly replaced by AI might be a mistake. And if you think about being a conductor, Friedberg, or a maestro, conductor of an orchestra, I think that's the job of the future is, can you work with these agents? Forget about co-pilots, because that's phase one of all this, but agents are phase two, where you have an agent who's writing copy, who's the HubSpot example you gave before, a designer who's in the cloud, who's an agent, an AI agent, making you artwork, and then you stitch all these things together. I've been loading ChatGPT with my kids constantly, asking history questions and whatever questions they want. I've been teaching them how to use ChatGPT.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, I think it's like there's this whole transition of humans doing manual labor to doing knowledge work, where you're using software to create digital output, to now having more folks spend more of their time being conceptualists or creators, where you can kind of be an architect or a creator of something, and the system just generates it. You state your intended objective and the system solves for it.
Yes.
As opposed to, hey, I got to go build the Excel spreadsheet and check the formula in every cell and do all the manual. What if I just say, hey, here's what I want the model to do. Please generate it for me. And you get the result. It enables you to do 100 times more work.
That's why I use the analogy conductor or orchestra leader. Sachs, what do you think? This is you're on the populist side. You really have your finger on what Americans think. And that's a compliment. It's a literal compliment. But I do think I think you've become especially as the longer I've known you, we've known each other for over 20 years, you've become more populist. So what's the word on the street here amongst, Gen Pop? And how do you think they're taking this news when they see somebody like Jon Stewart they respect? When you see somebody like Jon Stewart, doing this, that's like going to hit a large swath of these, elites that we've talked about before on the show who are losing their jobs, or maybe their salaries are getting capped.
Well, first of all, Jason, to quote Senator Graukus from Gladiator, I may not be a man of the people, but I do try to be a man for the people.
Yes, exactly.
So,
oh my God, did you see the AI? Did you see the AI from some Y Combinator company where they made a little video of us and like we're talking about somebody's nuts, and then they were like, you said, oh, I'm going to ask my butler to ask my assistant to ask my house manager to then ask my chauffeur to pick those up. It's like, it was a pretty great clip.
Yeah, it looked funny. Look, to be frank, no one cares what Jon Stewart thinks. He's never been less relevant and less funny. This is a story that the media has been hyping up for months now. COVID's over, so they need something else to scare us with. And what they really should be talking is that we've got two wars that risk spiraling out of control.
And debt.
They don't want to go there. They don't want to go there. Or the national debt. Exactly right, Friedberg. They don't want to go there either, because neither of those issues reflect well on the current administration in power. So they're going to scare us with this. Now, look, in the short to medium term, AI leads to productivity gains. In the long term, it may lead to job losses, but as you guys pointed out, hopefully by then we'll have lots of other jobs created by the productivity boom that we're going to get. And this has been the case throughout history with regard to technology improvements. And if we don't have these productivity improvements, what's going to drive the growth in GDP? What's going to allow us to pay off this enormous national debt that seems to be so large that it's unrepayable? We need the productivity gains that AI is going to unlock. Without them, we're definitely toast. So look, I don't place a lot of stock in this Jon Stewart story. It's just one of many that the media is creating to try and scare us about AI.
That's actually a great guest. Jon Stewart would be a great guest along with Lina Khan. Put those on the list.
Have you seen this clip where Yann LeCun basically says our best LLM is 50 times smaller than what a 4-year-old has processed since they've been born?
A 4-year-old has been awake a total of 16,000 hours. And you say, okay, 16,000 hours, multiply this by 3,600 seconds per hour, and then figure out what's the bandwidth of the optical nerve going to the cortex. It's about 20 megabytes, right? You have 1 million nerve fibers per eye, and it's about 10 bytes per second, right? Give or take. So multiply, that's 10 to the 15 bytes by the time you're 4. 50 times more than whatever LLM, like the biggest LLM in the world, have been trained on, okay? So what that tells you is that in the space of a few months, the baby has seen more information than the biggest LLMs that we have.
The point is that, and this is one of the foremost experts in AI and really one of the fathers of modern AI, what he's basically saying is it's still more artificial than intelligent. And everybody needs to take a deep breath and understand that there's just going to be a lot more work before you get to this omnipresent agent that just replaces and destroys everything and thinks on its own.
Yeah.
I'm willing to bet on all of us versus a bunch of 4-year-olds.
And I just want to say kumbaya to Davos as well, with a clip from Davos. Thanks for letting us use that. Yeah, it's interesting, Sachs, the number of jobs that will be replaced or augmented, and then the creation of jobs. And then you start thinking about, well, how many jobs exist in the real world? I saw Waymo is doing Uber Eats deliveries. And you just think, wow, more people are going to be able to afford Uber Eats, which is kind of expensive to use. So consumption is going to go up. And then you think about the Optimus, and then what's the other robot company that's making a general human robot? Figure. And man, those are starting to get really interesting. And I think that's going to be the unlock. So maybe you could speak a little bit to Sachs. What do you think happens when we start getting humanoid robots in the mix? And do you have any investments in that space?
I don't, because I don't do that kind of hardware R&D. I mean, look, I think you're right that AI does lead to robotics, because one of the hard things about robotics is just having the robot not just move, but understand what's happening in the world around it and then make the right decisions about how to react to that. And so LLMs do start creating a path for the robots to be able to make intelligent decisions without having to be programmed with a bunch of if-then statements, right? And I mean, self-driving kind of does this too. I mean, self-driving is sort of it's kind of like the early prototype for these kinds of robots. And that's why it's not a surprise that Tesla is developing Optimus, is because you think about what self-driving is. It's a device, a car with a whole bunch of cameras on it. It takes in all that visual information, and then it makes decisions about how to move and how to react. And then it's trained based on mirroring human decisions, all those human decisions that Tesla's been able to gather through the combination of self-driving with humans intervening, allows it to train the self-driving, I guess, brain, you could say.
Well, and it's also Sachs moving at 2 or 3 miles per hour, so it can take its time. And if you haven't seen this figure, this combines the language model with what you're discussing, Sachs. So the language models, when you show them a picture and you say, hey, and this is from Figure, and this is their robot, and it says, hey, give me something to eat. Have you guys seen this before?
I've heard some of the founders of these robotics companies talk about why they create robots in a humanoid shape. And it's not just because they're trying to create a replacement for humans or something like that. It's also because now they can point cameras at the way that humans move.
Yes.
And so they can actually train these robots on how humans move and react to things. So you're able to kind of create a large data set, kind of like with self-driving, so that the robots are able to learn how to move. And I've seen a different video where Optimus, the Tesla robot, is folding shirts. Have you seen that
pretty
one?
impressive, yeah. What's really interesting about this, Freeberg, is when I spoke to the people who are making these, evolution has made humans to operate in the world most efficiently over whatever number of years and creatures before us. So in fact, the world is optimized for the human body type. And so maybe you could talk a little bit about what you think is going to happen with these robots, Friedberg, in the short and medium term. When will we have one of these robots in our houses? What will the price point be in 5 to 10 years? And what will they be doing in 5 to 10 years?
I don't know.
Medium term.
We should explore that question at the All In Summit 2024.
Okay. Shout out to Elon. Elon, can you bring Optimus to the event, please?
Jason, I don't think it's a 5-year time frame. I think it's longer than that. That's just my guess. And one of the reasons is if you look at the use of robots in, call it industrial production today, they don't want humans getting too close to them. They're actually kind of dangerous because you have these arms flying around. They move quickly. They're very heavy. You get banged on the head by one of them, it's going to take you out. So
that's a good point.
The idea of having a robot in your house that's capable of freely moving, you have to make that so safe to a point that they just haven't gotten to yet with robots. So there's just going to be like a lot of fine-tuning work that happens before this is a domestic product. I think in the near term, it's all about industrial applications or maybe even military applications.
Well, and if you've ever been to the gigafactories, I was doing a little tour of one of them once, and somebody grabbed me because I almost wandered into one of those areas, and they have tape on the floor, then they have a wall, etc. But if you even get within a certain closeness with this tape on the floor, it shuts the whole thing down because they're afraid somebody's going to get crushed behind one of these arms. Chamath, I'll give it to you. When will we have one of these robots in our homes for the price of a Prius? Now, by the way, Prius is a car that costs about $50,000 that common folk drive. So $50,000 robot in our houses.
I think it'll be less than that. I think it's going to be in the next 2 or 3 years, you'll have a domestic help robot that you can probably pay $1,000 a month for.
Okay. Which would be
2 to 3
like
years.
$100,000 car payment. That would be the equivalent of a car payment on a $100,000 car. So, okay, you say under 5, you say 3. What do you think, Freeberg? Same bet. $1,000 a month robot, $100,000 sticker price. When will we have that in our homes?
No, I think it's $1,000 a month.
$1,000 a month, which would be the equivalent over whatever number of months.
And what is it? It does its general purpose, does different stuff.
General purpose robot, $1,000 a month, 50 payments.
I think it washes the dishes. I think it will do the laundry.
Take out the trash.
There'll be like a whole set of household tasks that it will do.
Walk the dog.
No.
Not responsible for a live creature. What do you say, Freeberg? $1,000 a month at-home robot does your dishes. There's a great bet for us. Give us the over-under. How many years, Freeberg?
I'm not sure. I think
the sultan of science. Come on, man. Give us a year.
Well, I don't think it necessarily follows this general purpose model. I think that there are likely going to be more narrow application ranges, and they're not going to necessarily be humanoid in form factor. I don't know if you guys have seen Gecko Robotics. Have you guys seen this company? Are you guys investors in this?
Nope.
Pretty impressive, suite of autonomous products that do specific things in industrial settings. So they have robots that climb on the outside of buildings and look for cracks using special scanning equipment, but they're very autonomous in how they operate and what they can do. And they've got a whole class of robots that can then be each one of those robots could do many different tasks for many different applications. And so the form factors, they've got kind of a set of form factors, meaning a set of robots that look differently and have different capabilities of them, like little spider legs or arms or whatever. And then they can be applied to go do something autonomously. And then they just run and they do it.
If you pull that up, you'll see it climbing walls, riding along pipes. Yeah, they're purpose built.
Well, they're not purpose. That's what's interesting. They're sort of a narrow range of applications, but they're not specific to do only one thing. And so they can work in different environments and do different things. And so you'll kind of pick from their suite of robots which ones you want to use to do different tasks, and then they go and do it. And it's really interesting. They're mostly using them for industrial monitoring applications right now, like looking on bridges for brakes and
checking pipelines,
cleaning windows,
here.
Cleaning windows, all that kind of stuff.
Ooh, cleaning windows. That's a good one.
Yeah. So they've got like a really cool suite. And I think that's what we're likely to see in domestic settings as well.
All right. So you would play along, I'm just not sure. Over 3.
By the way, I will say the success of Gecko indicates that there's far more money to be made in industrial applications than there is in consumer applications today.
I disagree.
And so these,
I think every human's going to have one of these. And I think every household in America, every middle-class household in America will have one of these $1,000 a month robots in 7 years. I'll give it 7. You say 3.
What? To do everything?
7. I say to do domestic chores, taking out the trash, folding laundry, domestic tasks.
I just think it's hard to justify that because you're only spending so many hours a week doing that sort of stuff. Is it really worth $1,000 a month? Whereas in the industrial setting, it makes a lot more sense
think about those dangerous tasks, like climbing on a bridge, looking at the seams, and climbing on a building, cleaning the windows.
Those tasks take years to do sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Many, many years of high-risk human labor. Whereas taking out the trash and folding laundry might be a little bit more hard to justify the spend.